Europa Station appeared on their view screen as a glittering collection of modules and docking arms orbiting the gas giant. Jupiter Megan felt a rush of relief at the sight, but Nova seemed tense, her scales shifting to a muted gray color. Megan had learned that this color change indicated anxiety. "What is it?" Megan asked as she began the docking procedures. Nova gestured at the sprawling station. "Your people not like different," she said, her simplified English struggling to convey the complex. Thought not trust. Megan couldn't argue with that humanity had a complicated relationship with alien species. While official policy promoted peaceful contact, the reality was often quite different. Fear, suspicion, and in some cases, outright hostility characterized many human encounters with other intelligent life. "You saved my life," Megan said firmly. "I won't let anything happen to you." She reached out hesitantly and placed her hand on Nova's arm, feeling the smooth scales beneath her fingers. "I promise." Nova looked down at Megan's hand, then back at her face. Her eyes cycled through several colors before settling on a warm amber. "Trust Megan." She said simply. The docking process was surprisingly smooth. The station acknowledged their approach and assigned them a berth in the civilian section. As they maneuvered into position, Megan noticed Nova shrinking into herself, making her tall frame seem smaller, less threatening. "Not hide," Megan said with a frown. "You did nothing wrong." Nova made a clicking sound that Megan had come to associate with disagreement. "Your people see Vex ships follow, believe I bring danger." She explained. Her assessment was logical. The station would have detected the Vex vessels even at the edge of the system. "Better story we need," Megan admitted. She thought for a moment, then explained her plan to Nova. They would say Nova was a diplomatic representative whose ship had been damaged in an accident. Megan had rescued her and was bringing her to the station for repairs and communication with her people. It wasn't entirely false, just selective with the truth. Nova listened carefully, then nodded. Her color brightened slightly. "Good story," she agreed. The docking clamps engaged with a shudder, and Megan powered down the engines. She took a deep breath and reached for Nova's hand. "Follow my lead," she said. They were met at the airlock by a security team led by a stern-faced woman with short blonde hair. Her name tag identified her as Officer Keller. She looked Nova up and down, her expression neutral, but her hand rested on her sidearm. "Harper," Megan said, her captain routine kicking in. "My passenger is a diplomatic envoy. Her ship was damaged. We need repair facilities and a secure communication channel." Officer Keller nodded briskly, though her eyes never left Nova. "We were notified of your approach and the 3 ships following you," she added. "Those wouldn't happen to be Vex warships, would they?" Megan kept her face carefully blank. "I wouldn't know, Officer. Nova and I were focused on reaching the station safely." That earned her a skeptical look, but Keller didn't press the issue. Instead, she gestured for them to follow standard protocol for all non-human visitors. She explained, leading them through the bustling corridors of the station. Medical screening followed by diplomatic processing. Nova stayed close to Megan, her tail occasionally brushing against Megan's leg in what seemed like a nervous gesture. The station's occupants, a mix of humans and a few recognized alien species, watched them pass with varying degrees of curiosity and suspicion. Nova was clearly an unfamiliar species to them. The medical bay was sterile and bright. Nova hesitated at the threshold, her eyes shifting to a deep blue that Megan had never seen before. Fear. She realized Nova was afraid. "It's okay," Megan said softly. "Just basic scans. Standard procedure. They won't hurt you." Nova made a series of clicks that the translation device around her neck rendered as "Vex, look for me. Scan signal may reach them." Megan hadn't considered that possibility. She turned to Officer Keller. "My passenger has concerns about the scanning procedure. Security reasons." Keller frowned. "We can't bypass protocol." She began, but was interrupted by a tall, elegant woman in a formal gray suit. "Perhaps we can make an exception." "In this case," the woman said. Her voice was smooth and cultured with an accent Megan couldn't place. "I am Director Lillian Carter, head of diplomatic affairs on Europa Station." She turned to Nova and inclined her head in a respectful gesture. "We are honored by your presence. Nova straightened her posture, changing subtly from frightened refugee to dignified representative. "Honor is shared," she said, her voice taking on a more formal cadence. That surprised Megan. Director Carter smiled thinly. "I'm afraid we must insist on some form of medical screening, but perhaps we can arrange something more private, more secure." She gave Keller a pointed look. The security officer sighed but nodded. "I'll arrange it," she said before walking away. Director Carter turned back to them. "We detected the Vex ships at the edge of our system," she said bluntly. "Care to explain why they are pursuing a diplomatic envoy?" Megan and Nova exchanged glances. They had been prepared for suspicion, but not for such direct questioning. Megan opened her mouth to repeat their cover story, but Nova placed a gentle hand on her arm. "Truth better here," Nova said quietly. She looked at Director Carter. "My people, Arcani scientists, we discover something Vex want badly. Thing that changes power in galaxy." She tapped her temple. "Knowledge here. Vex hunt me for it." The stars stretched before them like diamonds scattered across black velvet. Europa Station was still several hours away, and they would need to be vigilant. Something on the long-range scanner caught Nova's attention. Her spine stiffened, and her tail went rigid, a sure sign of alarm. Megan followed her gaze and felt a chill run down her spine. 3 ships were approaching from the outer system, moving fast, too fast to be routine patrol vessels. Vex. Nova whispered, her voice barely audible. "Found us." Megan swore under her breath and began powering up the newly repaired engines. They were still within the asteroid field, which offered some cover, but also limited their maneuverability. The Vex ships were faster and better armed. Their only advantage was Nova's intimate knowledge of Vex tactics and Megan's familiarity with the asteroid belt. "We need to reach the emergency beacon at coordinate point 5, Megan said, pointing to a spot on the navigation screen. "If we can activate it, Europa Station, we'll send help." Nova shook her head, her eyes shifting to a deep red color that Megan had never seen before. "Too far," she said. "Too slow." Her long fingers danced across the control panel, bringing up a schematic of the asteroid field. "There," she pointed, "to a dense cluster of rocks. They follow protocol always. Send 1 ship ahead, 2 behind. We go there. Make problem." Megan studied the area. Nova indicated and slowly began to understand. The density of the asteroids would force the Vex to adjust their formation. If they could lure the lead ship into the cluster and trigger some kind of disturbance, it might buy them the time they needed. "It's risky," Megan said, but Nova was already programming a course. Her determination was infectious, and Megan found herself nodding in agreement. "Okay, let's do it." As they navigated deeper into the asteroid field, Megan glanced at her alien companion. Nova had become more than just a passenger, or even an ally. She was a friend, perhaps the strangest friend Megan had ever had, but a friend nonetheless. The ship shuddered as they scraped past a slowly tumbling rock. Nova winced at the sound but kept her focus on the sensor readings. The Vex ships were following exactly as she had predicted. When they reached the center of the cluster, Nova pointed to the mining charges Megan had been transporting to Proxima Centauri. "Those," she said, "we use." Megan quickly understood the plan. It was dangerous and would use up most of their remaining cargo. But if it worked, the 2 of them worked rapidly to modify the charges and set them at strategic points among the asteroids. They would have only one chance to get this right. Back on the ship, they took their positions, Megan at the helm and Nova monitoring the Vex vessels. The lead ship was approaching the trap, maintaining a cautious distance but still following. Now Nova said, her voice steady. Despite the danger, Megan triggered the detonator. The explosions rippled through the asteroid cluster, creating a chain reaction. As rocks collided with increasing force, the lead Vex ship was caught in the initial blast, its shields flaring bright against the darkness. The other 2 veered away, but not before one was struck by a massive chunk of debris. Megan didn't wait to see more. She pushed the engines to their limit, navigating through the expanding cloud of dust and rock. Nova called out course corrections, her knowledge of both the Vex and spatial physics proving invaluable. By the time they emerged from the asteroid field, 1 Vex ship had been destroyed. Another damaged, and the third was hanging back, unwilling to pursue them into open space where human patrols might be encountered. For the first time in weeks, Megan allowed herself to feel hope. They still had a long journey to Europa Station, but their chances had improved significantly. She looked over at Nova and found the alien watching her with those strange color-shifting eyes. "You saved us," Megan said. Nova made a sound that might have been laughter. "No," she replied, pointing first to Megan and then to herself. "We saved us." She hesitated, then added, "Nova likes this name. Nova likes this ship." Her tail swished happily across the floor. "Nova likes." Megan smiled, feeling an unexpected warmth spread through her chest. Despite the danger that still lurked behind them and the uncertainty that lay ahead, she was glad to have found this unlikely companion among the stars. Nova curled her tail around the base of her seat, a gesture Megan had come to recognize as contentment. They had outrun death together, forged a friendship across the boundaries of species and language. They would reach Europa Station and face whatever came next, side by side. The dim glow of emergency lights cast long shadows across the cargo hold as Megan Harper checked her survival supplies one last time. She glanced at the alien female curled up on a stack of thermal blankets near the heating vent. Her scaly blue skin shimmered faintly in the low light, and her long prehensile tail twitched occasionally as she slept. Megan had never expected to find herself stranded in deep space with an alien for company. Yet here she was, 3 weeks into what should have been a routine cargo run to the mining colony on Proxima Centauri. The alien had a name, of course, but it consisted of clicks and whistles that human vocal cords could never hope to reproduce. So Megan had taken to calling her Nova, on account of the way her scales sparkled like distant stars when she moved. The nickname seemed to please her for reasons Megan could not understand. Their first meeting had been tense, to say the least, when the emergency alert had sounded, and Megan realized her ship had been boarded. She had grabbed the nearest weapon, a heavy wrench, and prepared to defend herself. The alien had appeared suddenly, her tall, slender form moving with impossible grace. Despite the artificial gravity, she had raised her four-fingered hands in what Megan now knew was a universal gesture of peace. The two had stared at each other for what felt like hours before Nova had pointed to the ship's navigation system and made a series of gestures. Megan eventually understood that Nova's ship had been attacked and she had escaped in a small pod that had been damaged during her flight. She had latched onto Megan's vessel. The only ship within range communication had been difficult at first, but Nova's species were natural mimics, and she picked up basic English with surprising speed. She explained through a combination of words, gestures, and drawings that she was being hunted by the Vex, a notoriously brutal species that had been expanding their territory through conquest for centuries. Nova was a scientist who had discovered something the Vex wanted desperately enough to cross 3 star systems in pursuit. What that something was, Megan still wasn't entirely sure, but the fear in Nova's multifaceted eyes whenever she tried to explain told Megan everything she needed to know. Megan shifted her weight and winced as pain shot through her leg, a reminder of their narrow escape when a Vex scout ship had caught up with them near the asteroid belt. The resulting firefight had damaged her engines and navigation systems, forcing them to hide in the shadow of a large asteroid. While making repairs, Nova stirred in her sleep, her tail curling and uncurling in what Megan had come to recognize as contentment. It was strange how quickly she had grown fond of the alien. Despite their differences, they had formed a bond born of shared danger and mutual dependence. The alien had been hesitant to sleep anywhere but the engine room, at first claiming the warmth reminded her of her home world. But after Megan had started using her nickname, Nova had gradually moved her sleeping spot closer to the human quarters until she had settled in the cargo hold just outside Megan's door. Her tail would swish happily whenever Megan called her Nova, as if the simple act of being given a name had created a connection between them. A soft beeping from her wrist communicator broke the silence. Megan checked the display and felt her heart race. They were approaching the edge of human-controlled space. If they could make it to the outpost on Europa Station, they might find help and protection. Megan moved to wake Nova, but paused watching the alien sleep. Her species didn't seem to need much rest. But when they did sleep, it was deep, and restorative Nova had explained that on her world, predators were so numerous that her kind had evolved to go long periods without sleep, and then crash for short, intense periods of recovery. Nova must have sensed Megan's presence because her eyes suddenly opened, revealing those strange gem-like orbs that seemed to shift color with her mood. Right now they were a calm purple with flecks of silver time to move. Megan said softly. Nova uncoiled herself with fluid grace, rising to her full height, which put her a good foot taller than Megan. Her tail swept across the floor in a wide arc, betraying her excitement. Close, Megan asked. Nova nodded her head, tilting in the bird-like manner that Megan found endearing. Europa Station, she said, her voice, a melodic mixture of clicks and human speech. We safe there. Megan wished she shared Nova's confidence. Safety had become a relative concept since the Vex had entered the picture. The species was known for their persistence and technological superiority. If they wanted Nova badly enough, they might risk violating human territory. They moved together to the bridge where Megan eased herself into the pilot's chair. Nova took the seat beside her, their routine now comfortable and familiar. The alien reached out with slender fingers to adjust the sensor array, her movements precise and efficient. She had proven herself invaluable during their flight, not only helping with repairs, but enhancing several of the ship's systems with technology unknown to humans. Director Carter studied Nova for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she nodded once sharply. Follow me, she said, leading them away from the medical bay and through a series of increasingly secure areas. They eventually arrived at a small conference room with no windows and a single door. When they were seated, Carter pressed a button on the table and a subtle hum filled the room. Room secure, she said. No recordings, no transmissions. She looked at Nova with new intensity. Now tell me, everything. What exactly did you discover that has the Vex crossing into human space? Nova looked at Megan, who nodded encouragingly. The alien took a deep breath, her scales rippling with nervous energy. My team study ancient ruins on Dead World, she began. We find technology old, very old. Not Vex, not human, not Arcani. Nova made a sweeping gesture with her hand. Older than all? Megan leaned forward. This was new information. Nova had never shared these details with her. The alien continued. Ruins have secrets, technology that changes energy, turns simple matter into... She hesitated, searching for the right words. Power source. Clean, unlimited. Nova looked directly at Director Carter. Technology that would make Vex weapons unstoppable, or could revolutionize human energy production. Carter said thoughtfully. Nova nodded. They hunt me because I know how to use it. I understand principles. Others on my team. Nova paused, her scales darkening to a deep blue that Megan now recognized as grief. Vex found them first. Carter steepled her fingers. I see. And now the Vex are pursuing you across systems, including into human territory. This could be considered an act of war. It's why I tried to stay hidden. Megan interjected. I found Nova when her escape pod attached to my ship. We were trying to reach a safe location without drawing attention. And yet here you are, with 3 Vex warships on your tail. Carter said dryly. Only one now. Nova said with a hint of pride in her voice. We destroy one, damage another. In asteroid field, Megan is skilled. Pilot Carter raised an eyebrow, impressed despite herself. She turned to Megan. You destroyed a Vex warship in an unarmed cargo vessel. Megan shrugged modestly. We used the mining charges I was transporting. Got creative. With the asteroid field creative, indeed, Carter murmured. She stood and paced the length of the room. This puts us in a difficult position. The Vex have been pushing our boundaries for years, looking for any excuse to test our defenses, if they believe we are harboring someone with technology they want. Her voice trailed off. They will attack. Nova said simply, matter of time. Carter nodded. The question is what to do with you both now. She looked at Nova. You claim to have knowledge of a powerful technology, something that could benefit humanity as well as your own people. or destroy us all if the Vex obtain it, Megan pointed out. Nova made a series of clicks and whistles that her translator didn't catch. She seemed frustrated by its limitations. I can share. Knowledge, she said finally. Build, prototype, show peaceful use, not weapon. Unless she added, her eyes flashing to a fierce gold, your people want weapon too. Carter smiled grimly. That will be for others to decide. I'm afraid, she pressed another button. On the table, I'm having quarters prepared for you both. You will be under guard for your protection, of course. She emphasized the last words, making it clear the guards would serve a dual purpose. When can we speak with the Arcani ambassador? Megan asked. We need to let Nova's people know she's alive. Carter hesitated. There is no Arcani ambassador here. The nearest diplomatic mission from Nova's people is on Mars Station, 2 weeks' travel from here. Nova drooped visibly, her tail going limp. Her people believed her dead then. No way to warn them of the Vex threat, unless Carter began, then stopped herself. You said you understand how this technology works. Could you use our communication array to contact your people? Directly. Nova's eyes widened. Need. Special frequency. Need to boost signal, she said, becoming animated. Could try. Carter nodded decisively. I'll arrange access to our communication center under supervision, of course. In the meantime, I need to alert Fleet Command about our Vex visitors. She stood signaling the end of the meeting. Officer Keller will escort you to your quarters as they left the conference room. Megan noticed Nova was trembling slightly. Are you okay? She asked quietly. Nova made a soft, trilling sound. Happy, she said, scared. Too many feelings. She looked at Megan with those fascinating color-shifting eyes. You stay with Nova. It wasn't a question, but Megan answered anyway. Of course I will. We started this together. We'll finish it together. Nova's tail swished happily. At that, the gesture now so familiar to Megan that it made her smile. Their quarters were comfortable if sparse. 2 bedrooms, a small common area, and basic facilities. Officer Keller informed them that they would be confined to these rooms until further notice. Meals would be brought to them and communications were restricted. When they were alone, Nova immediately began examining the room, her natural scientific curiosity taking over. She ran her long fingers along the walls, inspected the environmental controls, and tested the furniture with cautious pokes. Megan watched her with amusement. You act like you've never seen human living quarters before. Nova tilted her head. First time inside human station, she admitted. Been on ships, seen pictures. Never. Here she made a gesture that encompassed the room. So much metal. Not like home. Tell me about your home. Megan said, sitting on one of the couches. Nova hesitated, then joined her, sitting with her long legs folded beneath her and her tail curled neatly. Around her feet, home is warm, she began. All growing things. Trees that touch sky, water everywhere, but in air too. She made a gesture like mist falling. Her description painted a picture of a tropical world, dense with vegetation and teeming with life, so different from the sterile metal corridors of the station or the utilitarian confines of Megan's cargo ship. The night cycle on the station found Megan unable to sleep. She sat in the common area of their quarters, staring out at the stars through the small viewport. The Vex ship was still out there, somewhere waiting. She could feel it, a soft sound made. Her turn. Nova stood in the doorway to her bedroom, her scales glowing faintly in the dim light. She moved to join Megan by the viewport, her movements graceful despite her alien physiology. You should sleep. Megan said. Nova made a soft clicking sound. No sleep when danger, she replied, Arcani instinct. They sat in comfortable silence for a while before Nova spoke again. Why help, Nova? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Risk life for stranger. Megan considered the question. It seemed important to Nova. Why wouldn't I? She said finally. Where I come from, we help people in trouble. It's the right thing to do. Nova studied her with those multifaceted eyes that seemed to see more than Megan was comfortable revealing. Not all humans help, she observed. Some hurt, take advantage. Nova has heard stories, can't argue with that. Megan admitted with a wry smile. We're a mixed bunch. But I like to think the good outweighs the bad. Most days Nova made a sound that Megan had come to recognize as agreement. Same. With Arcani, she said. Some good, some bad. Like all people, she hesitated, then added, You good, Megan? Very good. Megan felt her cheeks warm at the simple praise. Thanks, she said. I think you're pretty good too. Nova's scales rippled with colors that Megan had never seen before, a pattern that moved like waves across her skin. Was that embarrassment? Pleasure? Something else entirely? Megan was still learning to read her alien friend's emotions. The next morning, they were escorted to the communications center as promised. It was a vast room filled with advanced technology, most of which Megan didn't recognize. Nova, however, moved through the space with confidence, examining equipment and interfaces with practiced ease. The technicians watched with a mixture of suspicion and fascination as Nova began to reconfigure one of the communication arrays. Her long fingers moved with precision as she explained what she was doing. In her simplified English need boost signal, she told the chief technician, Send tight beam through subspace. The woman nodded, though Megan could tell she didn't fully understand what Nova was attempting. Several hours passed as Nova worked, stopping occasionally to draw diagrams or make calculations. The technicians gradually moved from skepticism to grudging respect as they saw the elegant solutions Nova was implementing. Finally, Nova stepped back. That is ready, she announced. The array will send message to Arcani outpost in Tau Ceti system. The chief technician checked the readings and looked impressed. This configuration increases our range by over 300%, she said. How did you manage that? Nova made a dismissive gesture. Not important now, she said. Need send message. She looked at Director Carter, who had joined them to oversee the process. May I? Carter nodded. Once the message is approved, Nova understood the implication. She carefully dictated a message explaining her situation, the discovery on the dead world, and the Vex pursuit. She included technical details that Megan couldn't follow, but that seemed to impress the listening technicians. Finally, she added a personal message for her research team, including what Megan guessed were names unpronounceable to human ears. Carter reviewed the translation, then gave her approval. Nova activated the array herself. The equipment hummed to life, lights flashing as the powerful signal was directed into space. Signal sent. Nova said, her voice tinged with relief. Now we wait. They didn't have to wait long. Less than an hour later, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Red emergency lights flashed in the corridors as Megan and Nova were quickly escorted back to their quarters. What's happening? Megan demanded. As Officer Keller hurried them along, the Vex ship is on the move, Keller said grimly, approaching the station. They must have detected the signal. Nova made a distressed sound. They traced communication frequency, she said, her voice strained with guilt. I brought danger here. They were nearly back to their quarters when Director Carter intercepted them. Change of plans, she said briskly. We're moving you to a more secure location. She led them to a service elevator that took them deep into the station's core. The fleet has been alerted, Carter explained as they hurried through maintenance tunnels. But they won't arrive for hours. We need to keep you both safe until then. The Vex are demanding we turn over the Arcani scientist. Megan felt a surge of protectiveness. What did you tell them? Carter smiled grimly. That Europa station does not respond to threats or demands. She stopped at a heavily reinforced door and pressed her palm against the scanner. This is one of our emergency shelters, usually reserved for radiation events or hull breaches. You'll be safe here. The door slid open, revealing a small but well-equipped space with supplies, food, and communication equipment. Once inside, Carter turned to Nova. I need to know. Can the technology you discovered be used as a weapon? Nova hesitated, then nodded slowly. All power can be weapon, she said sadly. Even light, even water. Depends on who holds it. Carter accepted this with a grim nod. Stay here, she ordered. A security team will be stationed outside. Contact us only in an emergency. She left them alone. The heavy door sealing behind her, Megan paced the small space, feeling trapped, while Nova sat perfectly still, her eyes closed, and her breathing slow and measured. What are you doing? Megan asked. After several minutes of this, thinking, Nova replied without opening her eyes, calculating options. She opened her eyes, which had shifted to a deep, thoughtful blue. I have plan, but dangerous. Very dangerous. Before she could elaborate, the communication panel on the wall, chimed Director Carter, appeared on the screen, her expression tense. The Vex have launched fighters, she reported. They're targeting our defenses. The station's shields are holding for now, but she was interrupted by a distant explosion that shook the camera. Nova stood. Let me speak to Vex, she said. I can stop this. Absolutely not, Carter snapped. We don't negotiate with Nova. Cut her off. Not negotiate, trick, she said, her eyes flashing to a fierce gold. I know Vex Commander knows me, believes I fear him. I make him think I surrender, draw him away from station. It's too risky. Megan protested. They could capture you, better than station destroyed. Nova replied. Thousands die because of me. She looked at Carter. I need small ship, fast. Have plan. Carter was silent for a long moment, weighing the options. The station shook again with another impact. There is a research vessel in Bay 12, she said. Finally, fast maneuverable. I can have it prepared. Nova nodded, then turned to Megan. You fly. Megan blinked in surprise. Me, but Nova placed a hand on her shoulder. Trust you, she said simply. Best pilot Nova knows. The evacuation plan came together quickly. They were escorted through service tunnels to avoid the panicking crowds as the station endured more attacks. The research vessel was small, sleek, and clearly designed for speed rather than comfort. As the technicians made final preparations, Megan pulled Nova aside. What's the real plan, she asked quietly, because I know you're not actually planning to surrender. Nova trilled softly, something like laughter flickering in her eyes. Smart Megan, she said. Then she explained her true intention. It was audacious, possibly suicidal, but it might work. Minutes later, they were aboard the vessel. Megan at the controls, Nova beside her, just as they had been on the cargo ship that seemed so long ago now. Carter gave them final clearance from the control room, her expression grim but resolute. Good luck, she said. May we meet again in better circumstances. The bay doors opened, revealing the vast expanse of space and the looming shape of the Vex warship in the distance, its weapons focused on the station. Megan took a deep breath, her hands steady on the controls beside her. Nova began broadcasting on the Vex frequency, her voice taking on a formal tone that Megan had never heard before. Here we go, Megan said softly as she guided the ship out of the bay and toward their destiny. For a moment she felt a flash of fear, not for herself, but for Nova. The alien had become important to her in ways she had never expected. But when she glanced over and saw Nova looking back at her with those strange, beautiful eyes, she knew they would face whatever came next together. Nova's tail swished happily across the floor of the small bridge. As they accelerated away from the station toward the waiting Vex ship, Megan realized that whatever happened, this unlikely friendship had changed her forever, and somehow that made everything worthwhile.